I can't read this. Ha! Murder. Hashtag that vegetarian life. Hi guys, it's Cerise, so welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I wanted to talk about some DNFs, or books I did not finish so far in 2019. Usually I do a video like this at the end of the year, but because I've already finished, not finished, 6 books this year, which is kind of a lot, I thought, why not do like a halfway point type of update video and then talk about it again at the end of the year. Otherwise, these videos just get way too long, I think. So let's talk about the DNFs, shall we? Before we get into the books that I personally DNF'd, I just quickly wanna talk about DNFs in general. So what do you do with DNFs, basically? Because I think everybody has like a different approach to it. What I will do is, it depends heavily on each book, and I kind of assess every situation as it comes, so I don't have like a blanket answer for everything. But basically, if I've read maybe 100 pages or more of the book, I will still count it towards my reading goal, because that could realistically be a book. You know, 100 pages could be a book, would be a short one, but could be a book. And also I want to remember that I read it. Like, I want, you know, for my reading challenge isn't just like, oh, I read this amount of books, but I also like that it shows me the timeline and like just the covers of the books at one glance. So if I read that much of it, I like to have it in the mix to remember it was there, especially since most DNFs I don't keep or don't own in the first place. So otherwise I'll just completely forget they have existed, and that's not really what I want, especially for like stat videos and recap videos and that type of thing. There's definitely books that I have read less of, and then I've just like completely deleted them from my shelves because they just, you know, didn't leave enough of an impact really for me to want to keep a hold of that piece of data forever. The next question that's probably a little bit more contentious is rating. Do you rate DNFs? A lot of people are very much against it because they're like, well, the book gets so much better, you have no idea, it could be a 5-star book by the end. And to that I say, it cannot possibly be. In my life, I would never rate a book 5 stars that has horrible first 100 pages. Not in a million years. Not in a million years. That's completely impossible, because I don't rate the ending, I rate the whole book. So if a third of that book is crap, why would I give it 5 stars as a whole? That's not how that works. I think if you as an author cannot write a good book, or like a good beginning to a book, like if the first 100 pages aren't able to draw in the reader or convince the reader that this is a book worth reading, then you don't deserve that high of a rating for the book as a whole. Plus, in most cases, it doesn't actually get that much better. Like, if you hate a book in the first 100 pages, there's nothing that could happen bar somebody else writing the rest of the book that would change your opinion that drastically, in my opinion. So if I feel like I have read enough of a book to have a, you know, sort of representative sample size here, that I can realistically draw some conclusions about the rest of the book from, then I will give the book a rating. I will rate it 1 star, I will rate it 2 stars. I wouldn't rate it higher because then I wouldn't have DNF'd it if it were like a 3-star or up. So yeah, I will give it a rating. And you can come for me on that if that's not your thing. I don't really care. There's so many people on Goodreads who rate books I've never even read. So if, you know, that's the hill you want to die on, I'd rather turn to those people first, because that's even less of any sort of data to go off when rating a book. So I will still rate books sometimes if I've DNF'd them and I feel like I am capable of having an opinion on it. There's been many times where I've decided not to rate a DNF because I felt like it wasn't the book's fault that I DNF'd it or that I didn't like it, but rather my fault. It like either wasn't a book for me, or I wasn't reading it at the right time. And I've been reading for long enough to know myself and to know when it's the fault of the book and when it's the fault of the circumstances. So I feel pretty qualified in making that distinction. And so sometimes I just won't rate a book because I feel like it would be unfair, you know? But other times I feel like it's justified. So as I said, I just make that call based on each individual situation. But without further ado, let's not drag it out much longer and finally get to the reason you're all here, and let's talk about books I did not finish so far in 2019. The first book is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And this is, oh my god, this fucking fly is killing me. Maybe I can kill it instead. That would be fun. Ha! Murder. Murdered that. The first book I DNF'd in 2019 was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, and I don't like talking about this too much in videos because I know it's one of the most like Is it fucking moving again? How? I thought it killed you. Now it must be dead. Hashtag that vegetarian life. The first book I DNF'd in 2019 was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, and I don't like talking about this book in videos because it's very controversial and I don't like dredging it up again and again. You guys can read my review on Goodreads. I prefer to direct you guys to my Goodreads review because I took more time to write that and I don't trust myself to like off the top of my head talk about this in a very differentiated and holistic way that like covers all bases and, you know, all that stuff. The next book I DNF was Dead Cold by Louise. This is the second book in the Chief Inspector Armand Gamache mystery series. It's set in Canada in a small town, and I really enjoyed the first book I read last year for March Mystery Madness and tried the second book for that same readathon this year. It just wasn't working out. I don't remember exactly how much I read, but I just remember that the first like 100 pages were all like build up. There was so much backstory, so much like prologue almost, and the main characters didn't even enter the picture for the longest time, and there wasn't really anything to really draw me into the story. And by the time that the person who was supposed to die was killed, you know, oh my god, dog scared me. By the time that person was killed, I like actually didn't even care anymore and I wasn't at all interested in what was going to happen. Also, the characters are all written in a very unlikable way, and I don't know if that's a reflection on the author herself, like on her personality, on her way of thinking. I'm not trying to make any sort of comments about that, but it just genuinely disturbed me how horrible all these people are being, and I really just did not care. And that's the worst type of emotion you could ever feel about a book. So if you don't care, don't read it, basically, is my motto. The next book I DNF'd at literally page 5 was We Were the Mulvaneys by Joyce Carol Oates. This was my first attempt at Joyce Carol Oates, and I'd been meaning to read her books for the longest time, so I was quite disappointed by my somewhat bad start into her works. This is a book about a family, like almost, I think, a dynasty of like people living at a farm. Typically really enjoy family stories, especially like the generational type that, like, you know, spans many years, many decades. From the get-go, this book started off way too detailed. Like, genuinely, there is like 2 pages of descriptions of how to get from point A to this house, and it will like explain you need to take a left at the post office and then a right at the school, and then you go straight for 2 blocks and then you take a left at this building. And I was like, why are you telling me all of this? Like, on what planet am I supposed to care on the precise directions? I'm not trying to get to the house. I'm just trying to understand what's going to be happening here. And it immediately felt too detailed, like way too detailed and way too in-depth. And like, I feel like all this stuff should have been, you know, work that the author does in the background so that they can refer to it whenever they need it, like whenever they need to describe a specific thing, so it doesn't, you know, contradict something that they've said before. But I don't need to know all of that. I don't. I really don't, and I stopped. And this is one of the books that I didn't rate because, and I didn't even add it as read because I literally was like, I can't read this. It's not for me. I don't care about any of this. If I'm already skimming parts of the book on page 5, then I'm just not gonna even bother. So that unfortunately didn't quite work out. If you have a better suggestion of a book by Joyce Carol Oates that might be easier to read or like less detailed, let me know. I'd love to know. I also DNF'd Dating You, Hating You by Christina Lauren, which was a huge disappointment for me. This is a hate to love romance. And it was a disappointment because just before this, I had read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, which is already one of my favorite books of 2019. It was phenomenal. I loved it so much. And then this one came along, and it's just not a good book, guys. Like, there's a lot of issues that I have with it. I didn't like the characters. The hate to love is so contrived. They literally behave like children, and it's not even really hate to love because they meet before they even know that they're going to be colleagues, and they hit it off and like already have like kind of a crush on each other, and then they find out that they're colleagues and competing for the same job. So, you know, it's not like they're starting off at a place of hatred. They're starting off at a place of, oh, you're attractive, I might want to bang you. And it's just not working. And then in the workplace, when they're trying to sabotage each other, they're literally behaving like little children. It's not fun. It's not funny. It's just obnoxious and annoying. And I didn't care about it. And I didn't care to see where their romance would go. I didn't care about anything, basically. I was just like, let's not torture myself any further, and let's just call it quits. Second to last, I also DNF'd Blindsight by Howrey. I started reading this a couple months ago and never officially DNF'd it, but at some point I was just like, I'm just gonna not even bother anymore because I really don't want to read it. I'm very sad about that because I like Meg Howrey as a writer. I really enjoyed The Crane Stands by her, and I wanted to like this book as well, but there was something about it that just wasn't working. This is a coming-of-age story about a young boy called Luke who grows up in a family of exclusively women, and he, I think, gets like the chance to go to his father in Los Angeles and live with him for a while. And while he tries to write his college application essay or something like that. And yeah, it's just about him like finding himself, I guess, but it's written so weirdly because it like intersperses third person and first person narration, because you have the third person when Luke is doing things, and then first person when he's writing his essays, and his essays are like trying to write his essay, but it's kind of just like a diary or something. I don't even know. But basically they're interspersed, and so you have like sections first person, you get used to the first person, and then you have section of third person, and you need to, it's so jarring. Like you need to constantly get reused to the writing style, and then once you're used to it, it switches again, and it's weird. And also I didn't really care about him. I didn't care about what was happening to him or any of his situations or anything like that. So I decided to just not continue. I didn't add it as read. I didn't rate it or anything like that. It's like, it's not an objectively bad book. I just don't care. I don't care, and I don't even know why. I just don't want to read it anymore. And that's basically it. And then finally, the last book I DNF'd, I just DNF'd literally 2 days ago. Or at least I made the decision 2 days ago to DNF it and then returned it to Audible, and that is Educated by Tara Westover. This is a nonfiction memoir about a woman who grew up in a very religious family with a lot of brothers and sisters in rural Utah, I think, or Idaho, or Iowa, something like that, like a short state name. I don't remember exactly. But she grew up like in the mountains, sort of like a feral child, not really, but she wasn't really taught to read and write. She didn't have a birth certificate for the longest time. Her father was very like conspiracy theorist, like, what's that, like end time preparationist. The world is gonna end, the government is trying to corrupt us and brainwash us, and if you go to school you're gonna be brainwashed, and you know, the usual, like, you know what, who I'm talking, the type of person I'm talking about. In his case though, that was, I think he started off already kind of down that lane, but it was compounded by his, what is it, I don't want to like misdiagnose him. I'm not diagnosing him, but I think he either had like borderline personality disorder or schizophrenia or like some sort of mental illness, and that caused those like feelings of paranoia and stuff to get so much worse. And he, like, at the time nobody understood them, so he wasn't getting any help for them, so it was just a bad time for their family. And she wasn't really educated at the time, and then like I think eventually she like went to school as an adult or something like that. I didn't listen to it for that long because while I do feel for her to have experienced that type of upbringing, I'm not really sure what, like, I don't want to sound mean, I'm not really sure what the point of the memoir is. Like, I obviously haven't listened to it for long enough to like make any judgments about it. I'm not rating it or anything like that. I just really didn't care all that much about listening to this thing. Like, I was like, okay, so this, you did this, and then you did this, and then, you know, there wasn't anything all that special about it. Like, her family was unorthodox for sure, but they still loved each other, I think, as far as I could tell so far. Like, their mother especially did, you know, try to actually give them an education to some extent and get them their birth certificates when they were older so that they could actually do things in the world that required birth certificates. And so I'm just not really sure what the point is. And maybe that's going to be revealed down the line. Very possible. I just don't really care to be listening to it. Like, I don't know why. Maybe if some of you have read it, you can let me know the full story in like condensed versions so I don't have to listen to the whole audiobook. I just don't really care. That makes me feel mean because I'm literally like rejecting somebody's life story. I'm not rejecting her life story or her experiences. I'm just not particularly interested in them. And on that note, that was all the books that I DNF'd in 2019 so far. I hope to not have to DNF a whole lot more until the end of the year, but in any case, I will update you on how that goes. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and let me know what books you've DNF'd recently and why. Thank you so much. I hope to see you very soon back with another video, and until then, have a lovely week. Bye!